Number 5. Tanks for the Memories. Okay, now this episode did seem to get some backlash from certain portions of like the fan community and such, and I have a couple different reactions to that depending on what the complaint is. Like the complaint that Rainbow Dash is just taking it too far in this story about how she tries to stop winter from coming so her pet that she loves doesn't have to hibernate. Yeah, the complaints that, oh no, she's taking it way too far. She's totally upsetting the balance of the ecosystem, and she doesn't even care, and she doesn't care who she hurts, she doesn't care what... that, to me, is just a plain and simple case of taking it way too seriously. And I know, look who's talking, but yeah, stopping winter from coming is a goofy, fantastical idea that is played with a goofy, fantastical tone and could only have goofy, fantastical consequences. And I mean, it might have been different if they'd gotten like more into detail about just how this works, how these ponies have to painstakingly change the seasons, and just why that's so important, and what this means to them and whatnot. Like if they'd gone more into the world building of it, okay, maybe they could have built it as something else, but as is, no, it's just a whimsical little bit of imagination, as is the idea that someone who's afraid of winter coming for some reason could actually try to stop it. That's all it is, and it is played as such. So, okay, but the complaint that Rainbow Dash is actually being just like totally unsympathetic here, that okay, yeah, why does she care about this so much anyway? It's just her pet. She still has lots of friends to hang out with. She's not going to be alone. I mean, he wants to hibernate. Doesn't she care about his feelings? Okay, to me, those kind of complaints kind of make me see it even more as a great episode, because I think the mark of a great, complex character is very often that not everyone gets them, which sounds totally pretentious. Like, yeah, but you see, I get her, but like, nah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people appreciate her, but I mean, just... to the people who argue that she's not sympathetic here, yeah, I do think that, I do think she is. I do think what they were going for with her comes through. I do think it was very well done, and I will try to explain why. And, because, okay, I think we can all agree that the relationship with a pet is not the same as a relationship with a friend. There's a lot of key differences, and I think that, in this case, they're actually used to explore a lot of facets of Rainbow's character pretty well, and I'm not talking about, like, the oh-so-shocking character revelation that Rainbow has a heart, that she's really a good soul underneath it, because, I mean, we've totally already seen that, but no, just, like, why Tank is the one who's able to bring it out of her, the one she doesn't hide it from, I think is pretty... well, it's an interesting question to look at, and I think it has answers that are tied all the way back to what we've seen from her from the get-go, because, I mean, you look at how, well, Rainbow, she scoffs at affection a lot, she's not always open to it, but you look at what she's done, like with Scootaloo, for example, or with Fluttershy a lot, it's not that she lacks the capacity, or even that she doesn't like it, but like a lot of people with her personality, she doesn't always trust it, and not for unfounded reasons, because, like, just if you try too hard to pour on affection, try to force it or something like that, you know, it can get awkward, it can lose its meaning, it can even clash with certain, like, other parts of a relationship you might need to, but like telling someone hard truths, or being blunt with them, or just telling something like it is, or other emotions besides affection that might be important to a relationship, just like, I don't know, humor, or even friendly competition, what have you, anything you can think of. And Rainbow is someone who does also value, I guess, a lot of those other aspects of dealing with someone, like being able to be blunt with them, or kid around with them, and just be quote-unquote real with them, because not that affection isn't always real, but I mean, sometimes it can be used to push to the side emotions that are real, or thoughts that are real, and I mean, and not for everyone. There are people who can be really affectionate all the time, but also really realistic and really blunt and right down to business when they need to be. But as is, I think it's not. I mean, I think it's pretty realistic that this is what she's like. That she likes to rein in affection, even scoff at it, just to make sure it doesn't become awkward, or yeah, just not trusting it except in circumstances where she knows she can. But the thing is, with a pet, like I said, the relationship is a little different, because a pet, well, doesn't see the different complexities of whether affection is how real or fake it is. You know, to a pet, a lot of times something is just either good or bad. I mean, it's, in fact, a lot of your relationship with a pet is what you put into it sort of reflected back at you. So it's as good as you want it to be, essentially. So, okay, Rainbow Dash with Tank, I mean, yeah, she obviously doesn't have to worry about if she, I don't know, calls him mushy names or something like that. He's not going to go like, this is getting a little weird, dude, I'm just going to stand over there. And we've also seen, though, in episodes like Just for Sidekicks, for example, that he is, because of that, he is sort of the vessel for the affection that she otherwise isn't comfortable showing a lot of the time. Like, that bit where we see, where he loses his propeller and she goes to get it back for him and he's already snuggling up to her, like, he apparently thinks that's a bigger part of their relationship than she wants everybody to think it is. But then, yeah, when they're in the library later and everyone's saying goodbye, she looks around to make sure nobody's watching and then gives him that nose rub as fast as she can. And, okay, if that's what she's looking to fit in the few seconds where nobody's looking, then, well, what do you think their relationship is like when they're just hanging out together and nobody else is around? I mean, she already tells us about some of it in this episode, like how she reads him bedtime stories every night and stuff like that. I mean, okay, I think it's pretty clear to me that, yeah, this pet to her is her ticket to really forming this close bonding relationship that she's not really comfortable forming with anyone else yet. So, okay, and that all said, the depiction of how she reacts when that's all about to be taken away for reasons that don't even make sense to her is very well done, I think. Like, first she just doesn't want to have any of it. She's trying to fight it, trying to deny it, just any... I mean, she's becoming really standoffish and aggressive when anyone tries to even accidentally push it on her, but then when it becomes clear that, okay, either she deals with it or it's going to happen without her even having a say, then it's like, okay, she just totally forgets about keeping it under wraps and, like, starts openly spouting how much she doesn't want him to go and how much she's going to totally stop all of winter if she has to make sure he doesn't. And I know that some of you want me to say 5 stages of grief, and I mean, and yeah, you could use that as the outline, but I mean, to me, just in and of itself, that kind of seems like a 2-cent insight, because that term was always meant to just be sort of a loose guideline of what someone goes. I mean, I think the more to the point way of saying that is that this episode is about loss, about dealing with loss. So don't get me wrong, I mean, a lot of the reviews that brought that up have used it as the guideline for the review to make a lot of great points on Rainbow Dash, but yeah, I think the insight here is on how Rainbow Dash specifically deals with the loss, not just that you can describe it as the 5 stages of grief. Anyway, so yeah, just had a great time with this episode. I love the fun it has with everything along the way. Just the visual gags, the "Who's on First" reference is one of my favorites in the series, because that's not just taking a reference. That's actually that's just using the formula at the core and applying it to something else in a whole new way that genuinely fits this. Just like how these two Pegasus buddies have these names that can be confused in a lot of different ways, and are trying to explain to this manager, and like, no, he's open skies, she's clear skies. So yeah, this episode, I mean, I just have a really good time with it. I think I really enjoy Rainbow Dash as much as ever here. I did say in my review that, kind of like the last one, it's actually kind of an A- episode to me, though, because kind of like the last one, there are points that detract, except this time around it's more like in Scaremaster, where I feel like they were doing just like all kinds of great stuff, and they have a great conclusion with, yeah, what it takes for someone to deal with this. In this case, Rainbow Dash does have to confront it. Most of the second half, to me, was just kind of lukewarm, so that's what's detracting about this, that I have to sit through that in this episode. Although, to me, it's not like unlike Main Attraction, where I felt like the points that detracted were legitimately distracting, like this time, I felt like I pretty much got my A-grade episode just totally around the portion that's not as interesting. And I mean, like, if it just, right after she finishes the song, if they just, yeah, gone through the part where she realizes that everybody's moving forward with, like, Winter is moving forward no matter what she does, and then had somehow found a way to just cap off the plot right there to just naturally transition to her feeling defeated and down, and then everybody helping her to confront reality. Then I probably still would have felt like I'd gotten my A-grade episode, even though it would have been a lot shorter than the runtime, but obviously they can't do that, so as is, a great first half, a great ending portion, surrounded with a part that I just, okay, I'll sit through without minding it too much, so yeah, I do like it a little bit more than the last one, so okay, yeah, Cindy Morrow, I changed my mind. Please come back and do more episodes next season. I would much rather play good episode roulette with you than wait for the newbies not named Joanna Lewis or Christine Sonko to figure out what the heck they're doing. Please come back. Number 4. Make new friends, but keep Discord. Now, this is one of those episodes where it's not so much what's happening, but who it's happening to, because, yeah, the plot about someone getting jealous of their friend making friends with somebody else, that's pretty basic stuff, but when the friend getting jealous is Discord, yeah, now you've opened up a lot of possibilities, and when the thing he's getting jealous over is the biggest and most important party in the entire land, alright, I mean, it almost writes itself. I mean, like, I went on a whole rant about all the great gags they think up for this episode and how much fun they are, and I could go on an entirely different rant using entirely different gags that I didn't even mention before, like the Metal Gear Solid reference, Pinkie Pie grabbing the camera, facing the audience because she gets so excited, the male pony, tree hugger, calming down the smooze and forgetting her own name, if I didn't mention that, but yeah, like, all really fun stuff. And speaking of Tree Hugger, yeah, Discord even has a lot of support this time, because they throw in a lot of other interesting characters to add even more of a jolt to everything. The Smooze, for example, he is a great gag. Tree Hugger, like I mentioned, because even though she's basically just a self-parody, I mean, there's still a lot about her that you kind of have to like and kind of have to appreciate, so, I don't know, thou shalt not judge, I guess, but thou shalt mock. Making fun of hippies is fine. But, anyway, and, yeah, who else? Maud, of all characters. Maud in a Discord episode. I don't know whose idea that was. Well, probably there was only one writer, so probably Natasha Levinger's, but, I mean, it worked out fantastically. Maud is the only one cool enough to riff Discord and still sound like she has a better grasp on the situation than anyone else does. So, okay, love that. And a lot of the main characters are pretty good here, too. Like, particularly Pinkie Pie, like I said. She's involved in some of the best gags, and you know when you throw her together with Maud, you're gonna like what you get, so, alright. That was all a lot of fun. I mean, like, if I had to pick the episode with the most pure entertainment value to it, all other factors notwithstanding, this would probably be it. I mean, just, it is pure fun. It takes the jealousy plot line, and it enhances just each stage of it with these great gags, just makes the most out of all of it. It makes this basic jealousy plot a lot of fun, and it's just a shame that it had to insist on the relationship between Discord and Fluttershy, the conflict in that, because that portion was just, like, really awkward to me. Like, just the bits where he's trying to get her attention with this really excessive cough, and he's trying to drop hints that are so obvious that it's a wonder everyone in the room isn't getting them and thinking it's obnoxiously obvious. So, okay, I'm watching those like, not exactly having fun anymore until it cuts away from them. And in my review, I accused it of trying to get more out of the plot than the plot could really warrant, but I mean, I don't know, maybe Natasha Levinger just thought she was going to make the interactions with Discord and Fluttershy also really funny, and she didn't happen to notice the ways it came out kind of awkward, and which I thought that was kind of a problem in Pinkie Apple Pie as well. That's her other episode, which was also really fun, but also had a lot of awkward arguing moments, which I guess was its biggest, well, to me that was kind of its biggest flaw, but, okay, but yeah, other than that, though, I really only had minor complaints. That's the only reason it's not placed even higher. I didn't place this episode even higher because, yeah, I had just a really great time with it. It just really sinks its teeth into this plot. It is the best Discord episode of the season. It's the best Natasha Levinger episode to date, in my opinion. I mean, because other than Pinkie Apple Pie, which, good but not great, I thought she trailed off for a second there, but I mean, okay, she is back better than ever with this one, so, okay. Great episode. One of the most entertaining things I've seen from this show. Moving on. Number 3. The Cutie Map. Now, this episode got a pretty big reaction when it first came out, and I thought it was great in that it reasonably met the very high standard for two-parters in this show, but I still didn't think it was as good as most of the other two-parters. But when I said that in my review, I had more than a couple people come to me like, nah, man. No. This is the best two-parter. These are the kinds of themes that we never ever thought we'd see in a little girl show. This is changing everything. I mean, this is so smart. This is so new. This is like nothing we've ever seen before. This is the best two-parter. The best. And I can't help but feel a little bit smug about that now that the season's over and everybody, including a lot of those people, have their own top 10 lists out because currently my third place ranking is the highest spot I've seen anybody give it. So, but actually though, I think the reason it got the reaction it did can be traced to a couple of different things, and first and foremost, above all others, the episode that came out right before it, Twilight's Kingdom, because that episode, as far as I can tell, generated an even bigger reaction, and I think that the story there is actually a very familiar and a very predictable one, because, well, there will always be haters for everything. I mean, that just goes without saying. Nobody agrees on everything. Some people want to feel validated that they don't agree or just want to not agree, and stuff that gets a really big reaction, that's like moth to the flame, stuff that really brings out big emotions of people. I mean, they're going to go there. But the reason I think the pattern is, really stands out with stuff that generates the biggest reaction, the stuff that's like the year's biggest hits in a lot of ways, what happens there is that when something takes you up to cloud 9, just from the pulling off exhilaration like you really weren't expecting, like hasn't been done very much, it's easy to feel a lot more self-conscious when you finally come back down, because by then you've probably been thinking about your favorite parts a lot, and you've gotten used to the effect they had on you, and then, okay, you have to start hearing those haters' voices again, and the stuff they're pointing out, the effect it had on you, is not as fresh in your mind, and again, just the idea that you got that caught up in it can make you self-conscious, like, oh geez, I mean, I got so caught up in it, and everyone's actually saying it was bad. I mean, geez, I wasn't stupid. I wasn't being stupid or shallow, was I? I mean, then obviously the first reaction is to kind of backpedal, to make sure that nobody can call you out for just following the herd or just getting caught up in the visceral reaction of it all. But but then when something like this happens, especially right after something like that, something that tries to emphasize the more cerebral side, or at least focus on the more cerebral side, regardless of how well it actually does so, in that case, especially when you do at least like it, in that case, it's very easy to be like, oh, yes, this is very actually stimulating. I mean, it's clearly so much better than that mindless action thing I almost fell for 10 minutes ago. The themes, and it's dystopian, and I never thought we'd try anything like that. Okay, but, the thing about that is, then especially when there aren't more stories like it directly following up to sort of keep that trend going, to keep people vouching for that, then in a season full of episodes, when you get to what are legitimately the emotional high points of the season, then it's easy for stories like this that were just fun to analyze, have 100 different interpretations of, then they sort of slide to the back of your mind. And rightly so, because regardless of what a story is trying to do, if it doesn't take it to as high a height as something else reached with a different kind of story, then it's not as big an achievement. The achievement of storytelling is not what you've chosen to do, but how well you do it. So that's how I was looking to say that after stuttering a whole bunch of times. But anyway, though, that's still a lot of shots to take at an episode I'm putting in third place, so, okay, what is my problem with this thing that has me beating down and yet ranking it higher than everyone else so much? Do I think it didn't actually deliver what it promised with its themes, or do I think it started to, but then just fell flat, that it failed at it. No, I think it did go over the themes it promised to, and I think it did explore them, what cults, groupthink, peer pressure, stuff like that, brainwashing, themes like that. It did go over them, and it did it okay. Because, they do carry through the entire episode, and they are resolved more, well, they are resolved in that a solution is reached, but, the thing is, as far as how well it actually does it, how deep it actually goes into it, we've, even though, people love to say we haven't seen it in this show before, and that goes for a lot of episodes we've had in this show, we have seen stories and themes like this many, many times before, and done, honestly, a lot better, I would say, and a lot, used to go a lot deeper into the tension that can come from them, and how much they can make people question their morals. Like, in the episode like this, do we see any of the characters have to really face maybe, like, self-doubt, have to be pushed to their limits of self-confidence, and how sure they are of their ability to lead this town in a different direction, in the right direction, because of the way they're going is so persuasive and does have so many seemingly legitimate points. Not really. Is there, do we see them have to maybe realize that they don't always have a solution, or not, or have to work against how appealing this cult mindset is, how maybe even appealing to them it is, how it maybe helps make certain things easier for them? Do we see them have to maybe compromise, or even consider a compromise? Because actually having to compromise can be a pretty scary notion that, it says you can't deny that they do have some kind of a point, or have to consider compromising. Stuff like that is what really takes you into the appeal of different mindset that, for reasons you maybe even can't entirely articulate, is wrong, but still you haven't come to terms with why yet. There are lots of ways to sink your teeth into that, and this episode, what it does is it establishes a town that lives as a cult that's pretty much slave to groupthink, to peer pressure, to letting someone else do the thinking for you. Then it basically just uses it as the setup for a kidnapped story. The leader is completely irredeemable, completely inexcusable. She's a fraud. She is totally just forcing this on everyone, and she does not draw the line at disabling someone against their will or anything like that. Okay, so nothing redeeming about her. She's just a narcissist. There's no question that she's wrong. This town, they're just a bunch of zombies that can't be reasoned with. Every good point you make towards them just goes in one ear and out the other. So they're not gonna change. There's no back and forth with them. Nothing's gonna happen until you just find that one thing that either slaps some sense into them or just completely takes them down. So we're just waiting until that happens. It's not a question of the higher thought process you maybe have to confront. It's just how are the main characters gonna get the best of them? And it does make a couple interesting points sort of along the way. Like I pointed out in my review that Starlight Glimmer, when she's exposed, the fact that and she reveals that this staff she's claiming allows them all to be equal is really just her magic, that does inadvertently make a statement that, there's really not a way that you can have everyone organized into this role, in this lifestyle where they're all equal all the time, without someone above them organizing it all, so it's self-defeating. But even that, I kind of had to piece together on my own. The episode doesn't really say that, or doesn't really push that in the scene where she's being exposed. That scene is just about why, or at least what it's pushing, is just why the town will refuse to keep following her. So yeah, thematically, I can't really say this episode gave us much that other stories haven't already given us to much greater effect. Even something like Harrison Bergeron, for example, that really short story from the 60s with, I think, 3 actual scenes, give or take, that some of you might have had to read in middle school. Even that, I think, sunk its teeth a lot more into the idea of everyone forced into being equal and delivered a much harder punch against it, in my opinion. So, okay, this, it's okay. I can't say, or thematically anyway, it's okay. I can't say that, I can't imagine this being held up as a shining example of groupthink and cults being smartly right-crossed and put in their place and whatever. But to me, that was just sort of the theme, well, the setup for this episode that made it unique, made it its own thing, and delivered a couple interesting points along the way. Because yeah, for me, where this episode is strongest is just as an adventure story. I think that there's a lot here to appreciate on that front, including that it doesn't forget its characters, whatever the pony equivalent of humanity is, because, let's see, there's, for one, a very nice arc about Fluttershy, and it's kind of refreshing to see her be the star of a two-parter more than Twilight. So, okay, did appreciate that. Pinkie Pie has some pretty good moments here. Rainbow Dash is pretty good here. Okay, so all of that, and then just the way the episode is structured as far as how this adventure builds and unfolds and all of that, I think is pretty well done. Just how, first where we meet this town, explore how they do things, and we know that, okay, there's definitely something wrong here, but I mean, there's, we probably need to find out what's underneath the surface a little more, just like getting to know this town, getting to know what makes it tick, how everyone thinks here. That was all interesting. Well, the characters held against their will and having to play, I guess, sort of a chess game to get their way out, that does manage to be kind of tense in spots. I mean, it's pretty well done, and it doesn't feel, and I mean, it is a little bit rushed in spots, like, skims through the introduction as fast as it can. Still, though, it's still a lot smoother than, actually, a lot of the other two-parters. That's one point I will give it in its favor, and, as far as just how it works out this conflict, how it plays out this chess game without really cheating. I mean, it's also just one of the two-parters that I really can't say there's any major problems with it. Like my biggest complaints are just, or critiques anyway, are where it could have been better. As far as the problems here, other than being a little bit rushed, I can't say too many things against it. I mean, I think that, well, the part where there are a couple of painful moments, like the scene at the end of part 1 where everybody's captured, I thought that was very poorly done. But actually, Starlight Glimmer, even though they threw out her moral ambiguity and such and just made her the narcissistic, obvious bad guy, I did think she still had some nice character moments, and I did think for portraying her as just a narcissist, they were pretty spot on with that, with what a narcissist is like and how they think. And then ironically, in her next appearance, the other two-parter, they kind of tried to turn her back into, no, she just sees the world a little differently. She was just maybe misguided, and yeah, too late as far as I'm concerned, but so that she has some nice moments here. So okay, as this unfolds as just its own unique adventure, it is very well done, and well, I've been through 3 great episodes so far on this list, and I think that this one, unlike all of them, really didn't have any major distractions. It just, it was a pretty good adventure, and, well, overall, I think it's one of the show's better adventures with not a lot of problems with it, and that counts for them. And it's still not as good an adventure as something like Twilight's Kingdom or a lot of the other two-parters. It does not reach the emotional heights or the same levels of excitement or the same levels of the arcs being the arc that's explored from start to finish. But still, like I said, we don't get the level of storytelling that two-parters reach every day from this show. So, all right, I think that, yeah, this still manages to qualify as one of the show's better adventure stories, and yeah, you don't get that very much. So, okay, 3rd place it is. Number 2, Brother Hooves Social. Okay, now this episode, with Big Mac trying to pass himself off as his long-lost cousin Orchard Blossom to get Apple Bloom a blue ribbon, did get some backlash for transphobia. Some people found it transphobic, and if you're one of the people who thinks that, I mean, sorry it had that effect on you, but yeah, as far as I'm concerned, not even a little, because, alright, just plain and simple, there is no reaction or what have you in this episode that is out of place. The characters he's trying to fool, he's not doing a very convincing job, and they're not sure how to react because one, they're not sure if he is someone who's trying to fool them, or if he really is this Orchard Blossom character, and two, if he's not, they're not sure how they should react to that, and okay, that's all there is to it, and that's all there needs to be to it. It's a very simple disguise gambit scenario, and yeah, from Big Mac's perspective too, I mean, it's not a question of preferences or anything like that. He is doing, like I said, a very basic disguise gambit that's been done tons of times before by Bugs Bunny and the like, and I mean, it's a question of trying to fool people. That's what it's presented as, and again, it doesn't need to be anything more than that. I mean, bringing outside issues into it, I think, well, what I think that speaks to is the sort of the younger fans in the fandom, the, I guess, mid-teenagers and stuff. I think a lot of times people at that age who are still learning about these causes see something like this and see a chance to take up the cause and jump on it, and yeah, right idea, wrong battlefield. I think if this show did not have an older fan base, I think this episode wouldn't have been the slightest bit controversial whatsoever. So, okay, and yeah, really not even as much as Flutter Guy. I think you could make, well, Flutter Guy thankfully didn't get any backlash that I've seen for that. I think you could make more of an argument for that than you could for this, but and speaking of Flutter Guy, though, I think what this episode does offer is much in the same vein as Philly Vanilli, a very interesting character study through giving a character the chance to be somebody else. And I don't mean in, like, Scaremaster, where it's a follow-up episode that takes themes further. This, to me, is the same kind of episode. Yeah, a character getting a chance to let their personality out a little bit by participating in a scenario that takes away their inhibitions, that, yeah, in the case of Fluttershy and now Big Mac, allows them to be somebody else. And one of the first things we notice about Big Mac in this scenario is that he, while trying to imagine how someone else would act, starts talking a lot more. And like I said, that is just where his personality really starts to come through, where he really starts to let it out in ways that he's kind of guarded before, hasn't really let us see before. He's able to express himself, he's able to, he's able to sort of even just participate in scenarios that someone who's not very talkative probably wouldn't find themselves in, like Rainbow Dash coming by and giving him a hard time, and how he's actually able to not only give it back to her, but make her back off eventually. Like that kind of thing, I can't imagine us seeing that from him at a different point in time, because he's always seemed like the type who would keep hard feelings to himself, or at most giving the subtlest implications that he's annoyed, like back in Pinky Apple Pie, where he eventually starts grunting at Apple Bloom, or not Applejack, and giving her dirty looks and stuff. But there's that, and there's also how he seems to kind of thrive on the chance to shine, and now that he doesn't have to be like self-conscious, how he really gets into that song they sing and stuff like that. I mean, he just the whole thing really carries a sense of like breaking loose. There's a real energy to it. It's a lot of fun, and there's a real sense of, I guess, just satisfaction to it, just of joy, I guess, or not even joy, catharsis, or what have you. I don't know, I'm not going to sit here all day thinking of the perfect word, but anyway, though, that said, though, since it's also an inherently funny scenario, trying to pull off a disguise that doesn't 100% hold up, they also manage to get a lot of comedy out of it with very good timing, I have to say. Because like the scene where he first introduces himself to the Crusaders as Orchard Blossom, and they're not fooled for even a second. The song, how he gets so into it that he forgets not to rock out on a low note, and even adds an extra inflection to it. Like, sisterhood! Da! And then Apple Bloom right next to him, like realizing what's happening mid-note and like trying to go along with it, just like, like very good comedic timing on all of that. So, okay. It's a very fun episode, it's a very funny episode, and it, from all of that, builds to one of the sweetest resolutions I remember from this show, because Yeah, well, this one is actually, the resolution is actually where Apple Bloom gets to shine a little bit, because she's pretty good here too, and then granted in the scene right beforehand where he finally gets busted and they have to go home defeated, in one sense of the word, yeah, she was mad, and then she's not in the very next scene, but honestly, I kind of like that they decided that, at least at this point, she's not the type of character who needs to be Little Miss Pissy Pants for hours on end, that she can, like, take a little time to cool off, and then, okay, she cares more about making things right with this character who is clearly not doing well than she does, and who's important to her, than she does about holding petty grudges and stuff. So, okay, I did really appreciate that, and the scene itself is just this really gentle, delicate, and very sweet moment that just everything plays so well about it, where we get to actually see part of what makes Apple Bloom a really good character, or at least, well, in this episode and potentially in others, because, I mean, this season seemed to decide that she is a leader, and not in quite the same way as any of the other characters we've seen so far, that she's whatever the pony equivalent of a people person is, probably still a people person, since they do sometimes refer to each other as people, but anyway, yeah, she, as we see here, kind of knows what to say to him to get him to open up to her a little bit, and when he's ready to shy away from it, to sort of get him to keep going, to not make him feel like too self-conscious or anything like that, and just the gentle way that they handle that, and the the way they, I think, write her lines pretty well. And I never really bought it more this season than I did here, that Apple Bloom is a leader, is a people person, is able to connect and empathize with others and get them to open up to her and determine kind of what they need her to say to make things right. So, okay, I appreciated that. And Big Mac is also very good here, so finally expressing, like, what she means to him and what he was hoping for, what his, well, what he's having trouble coping with. And so, yeah, it's just possibly the best bonding scene that the series has ever done. And that's no small feat, since it definitely has some competition there, but I mean, it's just this really perfect little moment between the two of them, and okay, for that, I think this episode is one of the most fun, one of the best written, and from a character standpoint, one of the easiest to appreciate of the entire season, so yeah, easily one of the best. And the number one episode of Season 5 is... Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep?
You were expecting someone else?
Okay, now if you haven't watched my reviews and you're wondering what happened to this episode or that episode, I'll just say that, yeah, it's not a mistake. So, okay, if you want to know more than that, feel free to ask or watch at your own risk, but anyway, Do Princesses Dream of Magic Sheep. This episode takes off running right from the get-go and keeps it up all the way to the end. This draws us in right away with the mystery of the Tantabus first, and what it even is, we don't know right away, and that is a very strong scene, and then looking at Luna's mindset, her psyche, and how she's determined to take responsibility for this, and the dreams of the main characters, just the gags they weave in with those, the main characters get to be pretty funny this time around, and also, though, how the dreams explore the psyches of some of the characters having them. That was a lot of fun and very interesting. And then, of course, the climax, in which the town's citizens dream up things that they and we want to see show up and battle the Tantabus. Like, this is how you do fan service. This is not just pointing a finger at something that we presumably want to see whenever the episode can make the excuse for it. No, this is actually weaving it into the story, so there's a reason for it to be there. I mean, it's actually brought in to serve the purpose that each of the things being referenced were originally meant to serve. So, okay, it's the main reason for them is not just because we want to see them, that's just what makes them even more awesome. This is definitely, as far as I'm concerned, the best episode, the best fan service of the season, and the best episode for reasons including that. But then, of course, there's also the complaint I guess a couple people made that this episode just makes Luna too emo. It's totally changing the character we all know who's funny and eccentric and way too strong to have issues like the ones this show is celebrated for portraying as well as it does. Get out. I mean, yeah, nobody complained that she wasn't being funny in Bloom and Gloom not long before this, and in fact she's funnier here, because they do let her be funny a few times in the straight man sort of way that she was also funny in Luna Eclipse, so there was absolutely no comedy from her in Bloom and Gloom, and yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty clear that that part of the complaint is just an excuse for the fact that people don't want to see Luna with legitimate issues. They don't want that to be a part of her character. And that's actually kind of curious to me, because I did not notice as much backlash towards Moondancer or Starlight Glimmer, who were depicted as having kind of similar issues, and in fact the biggest difference I see is that this time it's tied into a fully fleshed out personality, one that belongs to a character we know, and as such has discernible consequences on them and what they're like, instead of just being there so we can to define the character in question, so we can just have the feel-good appeal of like, yay, their plot was resolved by our heroes making them feel all better, just making the issue go away. Whereas here instead it gets into more the consequences of living with this every day and working with it, and what it takes to actually make it go away step by step, how it involves their psyche and the real consequences that of what they accept or what they don't accept. So, okay, but as far as which one is the best depiction because of that, I would have to say easily this one. It's a very three-dimensional portrayal and a very intelligent one. I think it's tied back to what we've seen a lot from Luna, how she works in the background, how she deflects credit almost, how she starts a lot of lessons with the admission that she's messed up in the past, and okay, and well, some people complain that, but that makes her emo. I don't want her to be emo, and actually, when I think of emo, I think of someone who's just wallowing in the misery, who just won't let it go, almost reveling in it because they have just sort of given up on things being any other way. And Luna, well, like I said, they keep stressing that what she's focusing on is taking responsibility, wanting this to not count against her in the end, wanting to make sure that she's making up for her mistakes, which is, one, I think pretty relatable. I think a lot of people can think of scenarios or times where they felt like that, and two, I think it speaks to kind of a toughness in her. I mean, yeah, like some people are saying that it makes her look kind of weak. I kind of think it makes her look even stronger, because it speaks to how she's willing and able to carry this extra burden, to put this extra responsibility on herself and make it happen, work around the clock to get it done, and to not complain or not need to, I mean, in fact, the opposite, tell people that she doesn't want their help, that they should be able to just rest while she takes care of it. And in fact, when that's not working out, when she's on the losing end of this strain, it becomes too much for her. It takes until she is literally in the middle of a nightmare, pushed to her absolute physical limits, and still watching the things she is most afraid of in the process of happening before she finally gives out and admits that she needs help. And in fact, though, that's the right thing to happen, because putting extra strain on yourself, like filling a need to, even if it's a need to compensate, or even if it's a need to do the right thing, all right, that's caused by a mental scar, you know, that's still a scar, that's still a wound. It still is leaving you vulnerable to something, and even if that something is putting too much strain on yourself. So, okay, I think what this episode ultimately gets at is, like, it's not really, it shouldn't be a question of how strong you are. It should be a question of whether you need to heal. But she's crying! Yes, you don't usually get to look like a badass when you're healing from a real wound, be it physical or mental, because no matter how tough you are, anything that you legitimately need to heal from is a weak point. You don't get to You're not gonna make it stop being vulnerable just by going, no, I should not need your help. I am fine. It does not hurt that much. I can ignore it. Like, no, you gotta unwrap the sucker and you gotta show it to the people who can help you, stinging and bleeding openly, and you gotta grit your teeth as they look it over and poke at it and determine what you need, and you gotta be able to stay calm and roll with the pain and the soothing as they apply whatever cure it is you need or whatever it is you need to hear, and you gotta treat it gingerly and take it one step at a time and tell them if anything still hurts as you're healing. That's the process, and the reason that that's better than the alternative is because once you do heal, you're stronger than you were before. And I think treating that like something to be ashamed of is precisely the wrong mindset, and I think that's what Luna was kind of doing in this episode, and I think that's what it managed to explore very well. And that's a very kind of serious theme and a very serious moral too, but all the more worth hearing in my opinion. And I think this episode did it with flying colors. Pulled it off very well. Except maybe the end scene, you could argue, is a little too brief. They go over what the characters have to say to Luna. It goes by kind of quick, but it does not skip the step. It still basically gets at what it is she needs to hear. I mean, they could have maybe hammered it in even more just to really make it even more believable that this is what Luna would be able to get behind, but still, it's all connected together very well, telling her that, okay, all this stuff she's putting on herself, that, they, from the outside looking in, don't want her going through that at all. It's like what I say about self-respect. You'd be appalled if someone you cared about was going through that, you should consider it unacceptable for yourself as well. So I think this episode, not only was it very entertaining while doing it, a lot of fun, I think it explored a legitimate theme, and it's one of the times that the show didn't cheat, that it went over what it really is like to go through stuff like this and what it really does take to move past it. And for my money, that trumps anything else from Season 5. So, alright, well done, Scott Cinnaborn. You've come a long way from Some Pony to Watch Over Me. So, okay, that's my top 10 list. Hope you all enjoyed that, and it's good to be back. So, yeah, looking forward to the next project, and I'll see you there.